Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Thank you so much, Shawn, for agreeing to come on the show today and talk about your amazing daughter, Berklee.
Thanks for having me. It's a privilege
to
be able to share about the love of our life.
Yeah. Please start and just tell us about Berklee and who she was as a kid.
Yeah. So she's our first child, and we prayed about before she was ever born, Lord, give us an identity of who she will become, how we are to raise her, like what we need to wire in. 'Cause there's so many choices.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we want to love your child, but the one that he gave us clearly was just in our spirits was reflection of God's personality.
Mm-hmm.
Reflection of God's personality. And truly that's who she became from birth. I can say for myself, and I think Tanda would agree, that she really showed us a love from God, a love that was superior to any dating, to even the kind of love in marriage. It was so different.
Mm-hmm.
And so pure, really, that it opened up a heart, both of our hearts, in different ways than we've ever known before. And this was all before any of this happened.
Right.
And really, she brought joy to whatever room she was in. She was really young. She had this light blonde hair, and people would always try to say, "Can I have your hair?" And she would giggle and smile, and she continued just to grow into a beautiful, beautiful person inside and out.
Mm-hmm.
And she loved to sing. And I remember she sang so much and talked a lot. And I kept thinking, one day my house will be silent, and I'll regret these days if I don't enjoy and savor it. So mostly I did savor that. And our house was filled with melodies and talking and all this just joy from her. Now, we're a normal American family, so everybody's got issues.
Yeah,
As
sure.
a counselor, that's a fact. It's not a debate. It's that everybody has issues. But her persona and just who she is brought God's life, God's joy, the love of God to our lives in a way that we'd never known. And so I remember even when she was young, I'd put her to bed and I'd come out crying, and Tanda's like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "Babe, the best part of my day just ended." Because, I was so terrified to have kids. If you ask my friends before we had children, like, I don't understand, like, until they get 4 or 5 and they can throw a ball and communicate effectively. Like, what? They're just consumers. I don't get it. But then we have this
You sound like my husband. My husband was like that. He was like, he would just say, you could just skip the first year. Then after a year.
Yeah, they're consumers. And I just have this opinion that women are experts. And so I just need to follow their lead, on little kids. You guys carry them for 9 months and you just have this native ability to do great things. And it was a really different experience of, wow, there's more available in life than I had ever imagined inside your home.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just totally different than the way I was raised. And it was just beautiful. And she continued to grow into that and develop friendships. And we'd go places. And, after the accident explosion, people would come up to us and say, I was her drama teacher. And in one of the plays that she was in, I was sitting alone and all the kids were over here and I was by myself, and she came and sat by me instead of her friends.
Mm-hmm.
And that people would continue to tell us stories about how she would reach out and connect with people and make them feel welcomed and make them feel valued. And she's, even her piano teacher's like, "Hey, I couldn't stay in a bad mood. I could be in a bad mood. Berklee comes over and I just couldn't stay there." She was so kind-hearted and loving. Her volleyball team, there's going to be a Berklee Memorial Tournament this year, in the same month.
Yeah.
For her. And we've had other people reach out to start fundraisers, but we don't know. Like, we're still so raw and grieving. I'm not in a position to be a part of that. other than to tell people to go for it.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And, you know, she brought joy, and she danced. We did karaoke. We, on trips, we played Taboo, the Mad Lib games where you make things up. And she's like, all right, Dad, let's tell stories. And we tell stories. And we were so much alike in so many ways, except for I feel like she was a better version than me, and a female version, in that she just had a different start. And we were able to celebrate her personality and who she is from go, even amidst both of our flaws. My wife, Tanda, and I, we were able to see and just recognize the greatness in her personality and cherish her. Looking back, of course, I would want to do things way better. I'd sit more, listen more. In my ideal world, I would never make a mistake. I would never raise my voice. I would just cherish those moments even more. And, even at the first of the year, we would go and we'd get a new devotional, and we would get a new journal, and we would set goals for the year. And we would talk about our goals, and we would do things like we did the Whole30. We did trips, and we planned, like, she went on her big trip of a lifetime to New York when she was 13. I took her, and I did trips with the kids individually. Just as, they'll never, I'm a counselor. So throughout the decades, the things that people have valued the most perennially with their parents has been the trips where they had them just by themselves, typically. And they, whether it was fishing, or whether they went to the donut shop, or whether they went on a trip, or whatever that was. And so I wanted to make sure to create those memories. And so I have these invaluable, priceless gems, and the conversations we were able to enjoy, the depths that she was able to go to at such an early age. Like, she had this innocence, because we homeschool. She had this innocence of still being able to play. And, even when we were in New York, she would hold my hand and not hold my hand, because she's 13. Hold my hand, not hold my hand, hold my hand, not hold my hand. And it was just that relationship. She'd sit on my lap, we'd tickle wrestle, I'd tuck her in every night and sing her song. Even at 14, the explosion happened 5 days after her 14th birthday. And even that point, we were still snuggling, still holding hands. But yet she's a boss on the stage, and she would go do great and have fun playing volleyball and have these great friends. So it's,
my Andy was 14 and he still wanted to cuddle. Yeah. He still wanted to cuddle with his mama.
Isn't that special?
And I know, I love that. And I was just like you, in that I kept really cherishing it, because I feel like one of these days this is going to end and he's not going to want to cuddle with his mom anymore. He was my cuddler, just of all of them. He just was. And and I just was sure it was going to stop, when he just got too big, and not because we lost him. Yeah.
Yeah. I had the same thing. Like, I lived in the awareness of this time is this small. And so much so that I have great friends, and we're very blessed to have a great community around us. But there's a lot of things I said no to with career, with even, I have a counseling practice, and we had 2 locations, and through some transitions in COVID, I had a choice to work a lot harder and be gone more to really make this other location fly, or to close it down. And I'm so glad that I just stepped back and said, let's just go to one location. And that gave me that time during COVID to really be home. I counseled out of a tent, virtual counseling. I set a tent up. We lived on some property, and I virtually saw people. So I was home all day, and that gave me time to go in and eat lunch with them and just be there so much. And I'm so grateful for that time, and for the decision to, and even though, like, with what I do, like, I am super privileged to have seen thousands and thousands of people's lives, families, legacies transformed through the work that we do. But there's nothing like in my life having a child and having kids and being able to raise them with your spouse, and the investment, the purpose, the significance, the valuing, it's just a surreal experience. I was raised by a single mom, and I didn't get that. I got something different. And everybody has, the Sunday morning stressed out trying to get to church on time, or the guy who wrote Easy Like Sunday Morning, I don't think he ever went to church, because it's the opposite. But the reality of how much we shared of love and life is, I don't think words could truly express the joy that we shared. And knowing that she's 14 and that time was going to transition to something different, but it hadn't yet. Like, she wasn't with all of her friends. She just got an iPhone for her birthday 5 days before, and she had a Gab phone, which Gab phones are great because they don't have anything but calling and texting, and it has all these limits. But she was great with it, and she was still my little girl. And so and it turns out my wife's like, I was like, she was my best friend, and my wife's like, she was my best friend. And the marriage counselor, me, would say, well, you're supposed to have your spouse as your best friend, and all these other quasi-judgmental statements that people might say. And I just, even when this loss happened, struggling through the process of losing her to heaven, it's, my wife said, you think that the Lord allowed her to be taken home because we loved her more than God? I said, babe, that's a struggle of every good parent, is to not put their child above God, above their spouse, that's a struggle. And if that were the case, all of our friends that are, the great parents, they'd all lose their kids.
Right.
Because it's this constantly balancing act. It's like the guy on the stage with the plates, spinning all the plates. It's, I don't know, but I know that I wasn't really looking forward to college. I wasn't looking forward to her first boyfriend. I may have wired in, it's okay to stay home and go to college. And, it's fine to date when you're 30. It's the perfect age to start dating. I may have said things like that to her a lot. And with her here, our home was filled. So much laughter.
Yeah.
And so much joy. With her not here, Alexa's the only one that sings. Yeah. She's the only one that sings now. And we just got back from this trip. It was similar to the trip that we would have taken. We had a trip planned. The day, basically, we were going to have this big summer of a lifetime we had planned, right? And it started. We were going to leave that night. The explosion happened to go to the lake, and then we're going to come back. I was going to work for 2 days. Then we're going to go on this road trip for 2 weeks to Florida. And we had it planned out. And it was our first big road trip like that. I mean, we went to Colorado once, but it's our first big one, like, multiple days like that. And this road trip that we had now was a lot of media and a lot of movies and podcasts, and not as much of the interacting, because we're still trying to navigate life without the reflection of God's personality in our home, in the way that it was.
Yeah.
So that, and my wife would have a whole different narrative of who Berklee is. And can I read you something? It's something I do daily. I make a lot of effort to heal. And I say effort and not accomplishment, because I feel like I mostly am stuck and way further back than I need to be. And thought I'd be further along in some areas, and other areas I'm still in shock that I'm even in this position. But one of the things that I did when this first happened was I said I was going to take a year off of work. I think I even said that in the ambulance. Like, I'm not, so I do marriage counseling, and I've counseled for a while. So a lot of people in our city and around know me, or at least know my name. And even the ambulance person is like, "Are you Shawn Maguire? The Shawn?" I'm like, "It's not." I was supposed to see you for marriage counseling, but I couldn't get in. So there's a lot that I would counsel myself to do. Yeah. Before this, I was compassionate before, but I think the depth of compassion is even greater. But one of the things is, I knew that if I did not deal with this, the loss of my precious Berklee, I wouldn't come out of it. And I knew the devastation was so resolute that if I did survive, because it was like that, they didn't know I was going to make it. My mom she's like, say something to your family, because she didn't know, like, it was up in the air if I was going to survive or not. And just on the way there, I just remember thinking that I've got to get healthy enough to be there for my family. Right. And so these affirmations I've got a lot of them, but they're mostly in faith, because I'm not living out of them. I'm making an effort, but I'm not there. one of the
Mhm.
things is I journal every day. And so I get up, and it used to be spend time with God, and it switched into really grieving and talking to Berklee.
Mhm.
And it's not like I look at her and see her and it's just didactic conversation. It's I have images, and I'm just sharing with her. It's mostly a monologue.
Yeah.
And I asked God, and my wife said dreams about her, like she would be in probably, which is a normal shock of, um, and I know I'm just jumping around. There's so many things, but she would go on about how she would hear Berklee's voice, how she'd wake up and hear Berklee sing. I didn't have that. For whatever reason, I didn't go through the typical denial shock that most people go through. Um, the shock of her being gone is for sure, but I didn't go through the denial of she's here. Like from the word go, I just other than when she just was gone, unless God brought her back from the dead, which I prayed for it. I mean, I think as a parent, you'll do anything
Yeah.
to bring life back into your beloved child. But
Yeah.
let me read the affirmation. It's just one of a lot. This one's just I started out every day because I felt like I want Berklee to know that she matters, even though cognitively she's in paradise with Jesus and life couldn't, she's just doing amazing.
Mhm.
Cerebrally, I know that, but I just need to feel like I'm valuing her still,
Yeah.
that she's not forgotten. So I say, dear Berklee, I'll always miss and cherish you with my whole heart, my sweet, precious BK. The love we share echoes in my heart every day. Your beautiful voice and godliness continue on in my daily life. Know, my sweet BK, that you still inspire me to do great and to be great. You are the best marriage counselor I know, and the best daughter, friend, Christian, sister, servant, and pretty much amazing at everything but the highest level of math, which is like me. My wife's calculus 4 genius, and I'm good at normal people math. I know. Let's see. So I miss you so very much and wish we could tickle, wrestle, and laugh just one more time or once again. I stake my life on the reality that God is faithful and heaven is real, and that one day that we will be together again. I love you forever and always, to infinity and beyond. Hallelujah. Amen. Love your daddy. Then I go into, I'm a tender warrior, valiant warrior on a battlefield with my God and my brothers. I don't complain. And my wife and my son are not on the front lines with me. It is a privilege to lay down my life daily for my family and to make any sacrifice for them. God gave me the strength to fight for them, and that is what I'll do to my last breath. So I have all these things about who I want to be, how I want to live, that is different than how I feel and how I am thinking. And just the reality that's our current existence of life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I could talk about Berklee for the rest of I will talk about her.
Of
But her
course you
friends,
will. Of course you
her
will.
friends were out. They go to our home site, which is just now it looks like a bomb site.
Why don't you
Because
talk a little bit about that explosion and what happened so the audience can kind of understand a little?
Sure. So it's just a normal day. Actually, I slept in that day. I usually get up early, but I slept in, and it was gonna be an easy day. I had just maybe a light client load, and then we were gonna go to the lake later that evening. And so I just got up, and it was light enough out, and I walked, and I just pressed the button for my coffee. And then I thought, then there's I don't know what happened in the moment. Looking back, the force of explosion just paralyzed me and threw me forward and up.
Yeah.
And I just heard, and I had the AirPod Pros in, and I just heard, and I saw like temporal distortion, things like the toaster moving in slow motion while my eyes are open, and the whole thing was yellow. And later I learned the yellow was the insulation. And I felt like I was just being thrust and I couldn't move. And then I felt like I was like falling into hell because things were just coming on top of me and everywhere. And I remember looking up, and I really could not open my eyes. I could open them like for a split second and close. It felt like they were on fire and there was like splinters in my eyes. And I looked up and it was pretty high, felt like maybe 8 feet above. And I just thought, this might be it for Shawn Maguire. This might be the end.
Right.
And then the next thought was, I was like, God, get me out. I tried to move and I was in so much pain. I couldn't move. I was in so much pain. I literally could not move. And then I thought my family could be in danger. And I was like, God, you've got to get me out of here. I've got to get out. I've got to find my family. And
Because
somehow,
they all had been sleeping. Mm-hmm.
yeah, they were. I was
Yeah.
the only one up, which is typical. And they were all in bed when this happened. And so then I was it. Somehow, I don't know if God. Somehow I just was out. I remember moving one board, but then I was out. And later, the people that did it, they said, "There's no way you could have got out of that. There's number one. There's no way anybody survives this. Like everybody said that. There's no way anybody survives what happened to you. No way.
Mm-hmm.
And not just me, but my family.
Right.
So then I'm up and I can barely move. Like I'm in so much pain. And when they found me, I was still smoking from where I've been on fire and bleeding. And I thought part of my foot blew off. My clothes were on fire. It was crazy. And, I've been suffocating, right? I couldn't breathe. And I thought I was going to suffocate to death. But so I was able to breathe a little bit, and I was just flashed to open my eyes. And I went to bed with walls in the house that the family, and it was flat. Like there was just flat, like a bomb site. Like there's no other way to describe it. And then immediately, just in my spirit, Berklee, I just started crying out. I was crying out, "Help us!" And my voice sounded like somebody else's voice from a movie. But I felt the pain, and I felt the heartache, and I felt everything. But it just was like this weird space of, it sounds like a movie, it looks like a movie, but it's my life because I'm experiencing all the trauma of the situation. Because I never blacked out, I never lost consciousness, and I was aware the entire time. And I just started crying for it, and I had a vision of myself. On an island, a beach. Because I love the beach, with an umbrella drink, which I don't really drink umbrella drinks, but it's just the serene. But I was by myself, and I thought, I'm going to give my life right now for my family. I will die, or I will find them, because one of the two will be. I am not going to survive and not have my family.
Yeah.
And I just cried out for help in Berklee. And I was looking for her, but I couldn't see. So I was just with my eyes closed going through this rubble. And I remember calling for Hayden and Tanda one time, because if I didn't make it, I didn't want them to remember to think that I loved Berklee more, but just in my heart, it was all about Berklee. And my neighbor came and grabbed me. She's like, "Hey, you've got to go sit down." I was like, "No, I've got to find Berklee." She said, "You've got to go sit down. Hayden's at our house. He's inside." And I said, and they didn't know about Tanda yet. And I just didn't know, but I just, in my heart, it was Berklee. And so I said, I may never get up, because I really didn't know. Right. And so I go there and I sit, and then one of my neighbors comes up. He's like, "Hey, Shawn, it's Mike Ballard." And he's one of the guys I was calling. And we have great neighbors. I mean, they literally risk their lives going into everything to help us. One of my neighbors even said, they said some people were really nervous about going in, but our good friends were like, "It's Shawn Maguire. It's the Maguires. Like, they would do it for us. They would lay down their life." And so they ran in, and some of our best friends, he's like, what do you need? What can I say? "Find Berklee." He said, "When you did that, I felt the heart of Jesus. Just give me your Father's heart." And I didn't care. I wasn't worried about electricity, the fire, things slicing through my legs. And I was just going to find her. And I knew it. And he said, about 30 seconds later, I found her. And there was the roof on top of her. Her legs were sticking out. And when I heard somebody say, "We found Berklee," and it went quiet, I was already praying, but I prayed really loud.
Yeah.
And the people that were there said, you beseech God to take you instead of her. Mm-hmm. And, you just prayed. And, a lot of people had to go to counseling, from firefighters to paramedics to our neighbors. And I just remember that. I remember just thinking, I want to give my life. Like, you never know what you're going to do. You hope you would, but I really did. And I left nothing on the table that I know of. And I tried to get up, but like I said, I didn't want to sit down because I didn't know. And I couldn't move. By that time, my body was in shock, and I was just shaking, but my mind was still there. And I was just so heartbroken. And on the ride to the ambulance, I just remember just praying and asking. And by that time, I knew that Tanda was alive and that Hayden was alive. And I did not want to know. I mean, I did, but I thought if I find out Berklee didn't make it, I'm gonna have a heart something. Like, I didn't know a human. Like, part of my story is I have had a lot of injuries and things that were from youth to an adult that were just, I mean, almost died in a car wreck, a drought. Like, there's so many things that have been traumatic, but nothing compared to the level of pain emotionally and physically of my, I mean, I had things go through my body. They thought I couldn't see for 3 days because my eyes were so burned and some full of debris. Like I just had stuff in my skin, like insulation, fiberglass, and like everything was in my skin because of the explosion. And when I got to the hospital, I remember saying, I don't want to know. Just I need to get some pain meds before I can process anything. You need to get me under control, because I thought I need to be there for my family. I need to be there to help them through this. I can't die yet. And I remember we got to the hospital. One of my mom was there, and COVID, they didn't let anybody in, but somehow these two people, by God's grace, were able to get in. One of my friends who's a pastor, and he's like, you were praying and you were saying thank you, and then you were screaming because you were in so much pain. He's like, I really thought you were gonna die. He's like, I didn't think anybody can make you do that kind of what you went through. And they took me to this. They were stitching my head. I didn't think you could feel pain upon pain upon pain upon pain, but it turns out you can. And as a doctor, you probably know that. But they took me to this metal table. I remember this. They stretched me out, and like velociraptors, they just got this, felt like a fire hose. They started ripping my skin off, just ripping my skin off. And I remember begging them for mercy. I was like, I just lost my daughter, and I don't know what else. I need to stop, just please.
Yeah.
And it was unbelievable how much a human, like, I cannot, it's a shock that I'm even alive because of the emotional and the physical pain combined. The only way is God just chose to keep me alive, which is part of our struggle. Is, my wife will tell you, our daughter is better than both of us. We have an amazing son who's, his name means mighty warrior for God.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't mentor, love, disciple the warriors, they'll burn down the village.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a very strong kid and with a great heart. But it just doesn't make sense of why he forcibly protected us from dying, even our dog and our cat. People, there's so many stories about the amazingness of our community of faith and community at large, and then our friends loving us. But I just could not fathom that. And then I didn't know this till later, but they tested us all for COVID, of course. That's so important. And Tanda tested positive. And so she spent the first night alone by herself. She said, nonstop thinking about Berklee and in so much pain. Nobody was allowed to see her. Nobody's allowed. And one of the nurses said, I will go to the news media if you do not let this lady, this mom, see her son and give her his contact. She's like, I don't care if you fire me. And so she put her job on the line to do that. And the situation was so bad because my son didn't even know. He said, Dad, this is later. He said, I heard you screaming, and I heard you crying out for Berklee, and I heard you, and I thought you were gonna die. And I didn't hear Mom at all. And my buddy who's across the house, like, we live in acres, and the explosion was so bad, they found some of our photos thousands of yards away, and it rained insulation all day. And for the next week, it rained in the whole neighborhood, which is pretty big. And his door an acre away blew in. They're still not in their house. He just moved in this weekend, but my other neighbor's still out of his house because his part of his roof caved in acres away. Like, it was crazy. I mean, you wouldn't believe, but he said he saw my son's face start to, in his arms and his body, start to melt from the burns. It just start to melt. And he said, I didn't know if Hayden was going to make it, Shawn. I really didn't know.
Yeah.
And so the trauma of just going through all of that, my wife spending time by herself, and they said I'd be in the hospital 3 to 6 months. If I made it, the minimum 3 to 6 months. And I was so committed to getting out and praying for my daughter. And I don't know that you can start with the theology one way of
Mhm.
belief about God doing this, but if it's in the Bible, Jesus raised people from the dead. I've never seen it personally, but
Sure.
I
Mhm.
sure believed, and I had people, they brought us meals to the hospital because hospital food just makes you sick.
Mhm.
And so I I pulled my own feeding tube out. I didn't know that was not a thing. I was like, when can I get this out? Because I know I have to get it out to go home. And he's like, well, when do you want to get it out? I was like, well, how about right now? He's like, okay. And I caught him in the hallway because doctors round really quick. And so he cut it and I started pulling it out. I didn't realize I thought it was gonna be 12 inches. It was like 80 inches, something like 5 feet. It went all the way
Yeah, it's
circled around my intestine. Yeah, I had no idea. Like looking back, that's crazy. I would have let him do it because I could rupture, but just I cried all day, weeping all day. My wife and son are they handle it more internally, and there's a lot of denial going on, and I just didn't have that denial. I had the shock, but not the denial. And so I would not sleep well, and I'd just be in constant pain because of all the things that happened to me, and I wanted to get out. I wanted to get good enough to go pray for my daughter because and just see her come back. I just could not imagine a life without my precious little Berklee.
Mhm.
And I was forced to face the situation after I got out, which we lived on land. We had a really pretty backyard. It wasn't. It was just it was just us, right? It wasn't super
Mhm.
fancy, but it was
Mhm.
pretty. And it was open, and it just like both my kids, they got ready with me in my bathroom. It just we just lived life so much like this together, homeschooled, and
Yeah.
we come out, and our friends had, I mean, six or seven people offered houses for us to live in for the first
Mhm.
however months for free. And we're not capable of doing anything. I am not even like, I mean, probably not even out of ICU. Tana and Hayden get out earlier than me, and they've got this house. It's furnished. Like the community came together, it put stuff in it, put food in it, put the kind of food we'd like. I mean, they did the best they could,
Yeah.
um, but it just wasn't our home.
Mhm.
And when I remember my buddy, we went from the hospital to the property to this home. We went to the home. I just fell down and I just wept because my daughter wasn't there.
Yeah.
And we had just left the first place we went. I was like, I need to go to the property and see it because I hadn't seen it. I've just been in the hospital. I haven't been able to go anywhere.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I just said, this is what's going to happen. I said, I'm going to get out. I can't walk far anyways because I'm so weak. I said, I'm probably going to fall down. I'm going to just wail. And I did. What it is. And I just could not believe it. And I
Mhm.
did. And there's people there working. Like our friends are so beautiful. They were there working, and they had solicited other people, because there's just different work crews that went out and tried
How
to
fa-
find,
how long after the accident was this that you got out then?
3 weeks. So they said
Wow.
3 to 6 months.
And you're out in
And
3 weeks.
I pushed it. I pushed it because
Mhm.
I just wanted my daughter back, and I was
Yeah.
helpless and powerless. Like it was my only goal. And so I ate healthy. I thought healthy. I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't do anything other than hear people talk about, let me talk about what my experiences are and share, then talk about healing scriptures and things that are positive. And because I had so much negativity, and that's where those videos came out. I've got to do something other than live in this crap, even though I'm not feeling it. And so and just so you know, most of the videos didn't make it because we had wise friends that filtered
Uh, so yeah, so
that
you made
filtered
some
my
videos.
videos.
Yeah, so you made some videos that you posted, right?
Yeah, on the GoFundMe, and a lot of them didn't make it because they were just way too raw. And I mean, looking back, I haven't watched any of them, but from what they're pretty raw.
Mhm.
Just when you lose literally everything that was safe in life
Yeah.
and loving, and the people that you love the most are hurting the worst. Things that you cared about before, like image, or it's not as big a deal. It's
Yeah.
just not as a, it's just like, I thought the more people that tune in and pray for us and support us and help us in whatever way they can, Like people paid for things because I'm not working for a year. Like, we're looking into fertility things, which is super expensive. The funeral was $35,000-$40,000.
Mm-hmm.
We call it the celebration. I mean, that's crazy. Like I remember sitting with the funeral director, and super nice guy. And I was like, I said, I got to tell you, I want to reach over this and I want to strangle you and knock you out. I said, because you're telling me to pick out a casket for my 14-year-old daughter, and I have to pick out songs that, life, and you're telling me this is the typical length. I think it should be a week long. I think it should. How do I pick out a few? Like I think this is the celebration. I was like, he showed me all these things, and I said, let me tell you, none of that's going to work for my daughter. I said, it's not nearly nice enough. I said, and it doesn't encapsulate her life. I said, one thing her celebration will be, it'll be a testimony to the joy of the Lord in her, and how in 14 years she was able to accomplish more than somebody who's lived 100 for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we did in planning the celebration. I know I'm jumping around. It was the one thing that I could control.
Yeah.
I heard one of the guys, the gentleman you had on, that had a stillborn child, his thing was trying to help other people. And I think that's so beautiful. Go to New Jersey. I was born in New Jersey and raised in Florida. So I liked how he was real. But it was what I could control, but we all handle it so differently. I remember Tana was one of her cousins that flown in, and people were constantly over. But when I got to the hospital, there's all this pressure to plan this and plan that. And I wouldn't plan anything until I got to go pray for my daughter. I said, I'm not even available for a conversation about this until I go pray for her. Because, and so I had people go in there with me, and she didn't raise up. She stayed just as she was. And I can't tell you the things in my mind that continue on from that time of praying for her lifeless, cold, feeling skin, just doll looking daughter. So I said, I'm gonna do my best. And I had to go through 14 years of beauty that has been transformed into pain, and just go through all these. My wife wasn't in a position where she could do a lot, and I don't feel like I was either, but I had to, right? I had to. And she's like, why are you trying to control every single aspect? I said, because I can't control anything else.
Yeah.
Anything at all. I can't control anything else. So what I can control is I can show up and give my best to honor the life of Berklee. And then, like she would want, make it about joy and give an invitation for Christ, that people would know the reality that there's a hope beyond this world. Because if you only have this world to live for, then if something like this happens, your life is over.
Yeah.
Because one of our two biggest joys in life was having Hayden in Berklee. And Berklee's in heaven, and she's gone for us for now. And we had people from her drama sing, and we had other people share that loved her. Read some stories. I did videos. I have a friend who does video production, and he said, man, I was going to do it live, but he's like, dude, I just think you should really not do that. And the closer it got to that, the more I thought, yeah, I can't do that. Not. And so I did videos, and that's all online too. On the GoFundMe page, I did videos. I think you got to watch 17 minutes into it before the service starts. But people got, accepted Christ. People told us that their kids' lives were forever changed because of what they saw and how we did it. And as the person walking through it, it doesn't feel that way.
No.
It only feels like sadness and pain. But I do believe in sowing and reaping in this life and the next. And so I believe what you sow, at some point, you're going to reap. May not look the same, but at some point. And so I knew I would not get a do-over in that.
Well, that's beautiful that you had that thought, because I have to say, when we did Andy's service, it was a very God honoring service too. And I had so many people say that this will bring people to Christ and whatever. But my response back was, that's not why I did it. That's not why we did it. We didn't do it to bring people to Christ. I did it because that's who Andy was.
Amen.
And that was being genuine to Andy, and, talking about his faith and what it meant to him. And and Eric and I did both speak. We spoke and we talked about how ready Andy was for heaven and conversations that he said. And I did it. I mean, it was a wonderful perk if God used it to bring others to Christ. But honestly, for me, it's because that was the right thing to do for Andy. It was honoring of him and his life and what he meant. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's so good.
And
That's so true.
and and that service. What's funny too is we had a beautiful reception, all this stuff. And you talked about the cost of yours. I have no idea how much mine cost because it was all paid for. I had some friends and we never even saw a bill. We paid the funeral bill to the funeral director, but everything else related to that kind of celebration, I have no idea. I remember people saying that it felt more like a wedding reception than a funeral reception. I know that, but as far as the rest of it, I let people do things because I was so broken and it was so quick, because Andy died on Wednesday and the service was Monday, so it was only 5 days. So
geez,
I
ours was
don't
a
think
month
there
later.
was. Yeah, I don't.
More.
We just didn't have enough time, and I just wasn't in any way any place to do a lot of planning. I remember somebody saying, "Is there a certain food that you want?" And I said, "If there's cake, it has to be lemon." Because that was Andy's favorite cake. And that's all I said. If there's cake, it has to be lemon. And so when they were meeting with this, it was at this Frederick Meyer Gardens, which is these beautiful gardens. And when they were meeting with them, they gave like this menu. It was my very good friend. Her assistant kind of went and they brought back what they were going to serve. And my friend said, "Well, there's no lemon cake on here." And she said, "Well, they weren't going to have cake. They were going to have other desserts or whatever." And she goes, "You don't understand. That's the only thing she asked for. There's going to be lemon cake." I don't care if they don't have it. If they don't have it on the menu, if it's not a choice, you make it be a choice. And so I have no idea how they got the lemon cake. And I never even ate it. Isn't that funny? And there were so many people coming up to us. I never ate the cake. I don't know. I was told that it was very good lemon cake. But it's just,
that's great.
It's just different. You just have different things that you remember and that you can think about and that you can handle. And I think I just couldn't handle much of anything. You put a lot on yourself.
Well, yeah. And the other part of it is I was so physically weak still, really, I wasn't supposed to be out of the hospital. At all. I just really wasn't. And
right.
I could barely walk without getting winded. And I was just in constant physical pain.
Yeah.
Like when I'd start crying, my whole body, because half my body was burned.
Yeah.
And it would start to get hot and I wasn't sleeping. And then there's so many physical conflict. Like I need one, maybe two knee replacements. Like there's all these things that I'm having to deal with while doing this and having people living in somebody else's house, sleeping on somebody else's bed. And the most of the celebration service was paid for. I thought it was all paid for, but then we got a bill for $13,000 and my friend's like, "Hey, he's like, I couldn't even write the check." So he did it for us. We had friends managing our finances, friends. You would not believe the cheesecake or the lemon cake thing. They had pictures blown up. They had a thing where everybody signed it. They had a Berklee table, all these great things they had. And we had a horrible ice storm the night before. It was dangerous to drive, and people were flying in from everywhere. Even for my practice, even my computer guy lives in Utah. He flew in, never met him. And this great guy, Dave, and he comes in and I told me that it's like, "Dave?" And so people, even from my childhood, came in. And I wasn't in a position to talk to anybody really. And so they just came in, saw me there, and then they went back to wherever. And I was so broken. I was so broken. I just remember that the motorcade almost left me because there were so many people at the celebration that were loving it. Everybody carries a different energy, different spirit. And so there was something different that I felt from every person.
Mm-hmm.
And we're so well loved. And I felt like I had this bleeding heart and this gas tank that was constantly below E. And I might get enough from somebody to
Yeah.
just go to the next thing, to go to the next thing, to go.
Yeah.
And I don't think I live like that normally as much, but I think in the season, the only way I felt God's love, is through the love of others.
Yes.
My friends would rub my feet when, put cream. The amount of love that we felt was biblical proportions. And I think in a normal life, if you feel that, you'd be overwhelmed with joy. But it just got me enough to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
It just got me enough to get up that day. It just got me enough to get through the challenges with Hayden and with challenges with Tanda. We went into this. He got like 45 minutes of media time a day, whether it's watching something or playing a video game. They both did. And I came out, he's on it for 12 hours a day. And, instead of using pain medicine, he's watching TV and on this. So our whole lives, and he didn't have a phone. And because we couldn't communicate and we lost everything, my friend, great friend, bought us all new iPhones.
Mm-hmm.
And he just put us on his plan. People took care of as much as they possibly could.
Yeah.
Of loving us.
Because you just don't know what else to do, right? I think people don't know what to do. And so they're like, we just got to do something. We got to do something. Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad they did. I'm so glad they brought it. Like I didn't have to eat hospital. Once I became conscious, I was like, I can't eat the hospital food because it's not good for you. And I need to get out of the hospital soon. And I didn't know a lot because my mind, I have so much brain trauma and head trauma. And my skull was cracked through, and here's something else. Berklee was about 12 inches away from me. The coffee pot, right, is like where you're at. I just pressed the button. Her headboard is on the other side of that wall.
So that's why you went immediately for her in your mind too, isn't it? Because you knew she was right there, you think?
I didn't have that thought. I think something spiritually in my heart welled up that how you just have a knowing. I just knew. I didn't put all that together till afterwards, but I think she, like, we both have this, that's how cause of death, they said, was head trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And my skull was cracked.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember somebody told me the doctor was yelling at people because they did not properly treat it. And anyways. But the celebration service, I'm so glad that we did it the way we did it, because I even in the COVID, era, I didn't care if I died at that point, because I just was hurting so bad. And I felt like my friends and people around would love my family well. And so I wasn't thinking about COVID when I hugged people. I was thinking about the loss of my daughter and all the lives that we shared, all these people that came.
Mm-hmm.
Even some of my, we had to move the service, I think 3 times to find a place big enough and that would allow that many people in for that, because that was the time it was real scary for a lot of people. Yeah. And for us, it was just devastating. We couldn't see past the pain of where we were at.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, in those, I got so much comfort just from the hug, at that point in time. I felt like, when we were they're going through this like receiving line kind of thing at the funeral home, every single person who came to me, like, gave me a little bit of comfort and took just a teeny bit of pain off. Not that I felt like better, because I really felt horrible. Like I couldn't feel much more horrible, but yet at the end of the hours and hours of doing that, I did feel a little better. Like just sharing that experience with others brought a little bit of peace. I feel so bad for people that have been going through this during COVID
alone,
and have been so
I can't
alone.
imagine it.
Yeah. I just was talking to another mom who is actually going to be on the podcast soon, and they are finally having the celebration of life for her son this coming September, and he died last year as well. So it will be, I think,
Wow.
maybe close to a year. But I'm so encouraging to still have it, right? You can't just not have it.
No, you need that
'Cause
moment.
you need the moment. You need the moment. Hmm.
I remember I didn't accept the reality. I remember just like walking down out of the church and walking up, behind the casket, and I barely was able to walk anyways.
Hmm.
And so somebody jumps out of the aisle and grabs my arm, and then somebody else jumps out and grabs my other arm, and they just walk me out.
Yeah.
And then all my brothers and cry. Just I have amazing friends, and my wife does too, and they're just beautiful in our family. We couldn't have asked for more support. I
Hmm.
mean, there's in life you have, it depends on what you focus on. There's people that are knuckleheads that say, oh, the only reason people are treating you that way is because they're glad it's not them, which that may be true, but mostly our experience with people has been really positive around here,
Hmm.
of loving us and serving us and just doing what we can't do, because small things
Hmm.
seem titanic right now. um,
Yeah.
and really being on just with, I'm just telling you, like the grief plus the physical trauma plus all the meds that we were on and things that happened, it was crazy,
Yeah.
just crazy. I mean, crazy stuff. And getting out, that putting the thing in the ground and her not coming out, and I just remember her standing there, and they're like, Shawn, you've got to go, you've got to go, the limo's going to leave. And people were just pressuring me because it was really nasty weather, and the cops, it was just the worst time to have it. There's ice hanging off, and it was one of the worst ice storm history in the history of Oklahoma. And I just didn't want to go, because going meant that I accepted this reality. To me, I knew that if I left that gravesite, that I was accepting. I did everything, Marcy. I did everything that I humanly could do at that point
Yeah.
to bring my daughter back, to pray, to be positive, to
Yeah.
just from eating to, I couldn't exercise, but even I was fully bandaged from head to toe right when I got out, or when I was in the hospital. I would just lift my arms just a little bit. I was like, I was like, what do you want to do? I was like, I need to do something to get out of here. He's like, all right, let's do some exercises, some reps. What can you do? And I was like, I can do this. That's it. He's like, all right, let's do 3 sets of 10 of this.
Just raising your arms up a little bit. Yeah.
That
Hmm.
was it. And he's like, man, if your doctor would have walked in, I probably would have got kicked out. But even that, like I had, our burn doctor made an exception. He got special approval because you're only allowed to have one person because of COVID.
Yeah.
And they had a rotation of, my mom was there during the day, and I had a rotation of 4 guys that were there at night, and they would just cycle through on my, and
Yeah.
it's amazing. I Google Sheets, a lot about hospitals. That there's a lot of times you might have an amazing nurse that is like, wow, she's the best ever. Then you might have Attila Bahun
Yeah.
as your next one that's from another country, and you can't understand. There's language barrier. They traveled from another state to get there, and so it was really great to have people around, just managing my meds, and things like that
Just being an
in the
advocate.
hospital.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
of yeah, and in the hospital, there's a lot of great things about how they handled it. But the reality of coming home that day, of just falling in another person's house, and praise God for the person that donated it for 6 months. Um, it just wasn't ours. Like I look around, and they had they made it as good as you can make it, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't ours. And it was just empty and quiet. And I think Tanda was back. My son had to go back in for a skin graft. So um, they weren't there. And so my friends, they spend the night. So they kept spending the night until she got out. And they
Hmm.
just go sleep in the chair or whatever it was. And it was
Yeah.
really hard when Tanda got out, because she wanted to, her and Hayden still spent the night together. And they slept in the room, and I slept by myself. So I
Yeah.
still had my friends for the night, even when they were home for a few nights, because I would go to bed thinking about Berklee, just crying myself to sleep every night, wake up and start crying and weeping, and I couldn't sleep. I would just think about her. And I think it's the love that before is a boomerang that would come back with the reciprocity. You think about your kids hundreds of times a day anyways, right? So it's not like I thought about her more. It's that when I thought about her, it wasn't the reciprocity of joy. I'm going to get to see her tonight. I'm going to wake up and go wake her up and give her a kiss. It came back as razor blades to my heart.
Yeah.
It's love without a place to land. And it comes back as something very different.
That is 100% true. That is what grief is. Grief is love that you can't have, with a person at this moment. And it's just so, so difficult. So, so difficult. Yeah.
And really, I had to divorce myself from my experience as a therapist, because one of the things that I saw people have, I've counseled people. There's not much counseling I haven't done, but the hardest thing I've seen good people, people make choices about if they want to change by what they do, by what they don't. But with grief and losing a child, there is truly nothing like it that I've ever seen. Hit no matter what kind of a family you are, no matter great Christian, atheist, like it just rocks your world.
Yes.
And I had to say, I can't have the experiences that I've seen other people have. That's probably why it's hard for me to listen to other people's stories.
Yeah.
Is because I know how much I daily miss my daughter. And I don't know what it looks like, but I just keep putting my faith forward and saying, God, you're going to have to use this podcast with Marcy and do something with it that's good for others, as somehow, blessing others in some way, because I just hurt. I just feel sad. I just feel a longing. I've never met anybody like my daughter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's a better version of me, except for I can't sing. And I don't think anybody wants me to act.
Yeah.
So it's just all the conglomeration of so many things. And then life goes on, right? Like there's a part of our life that, because there was an explosion, because there was my daughter's, she's in heaven, that there's legal ramifications to that we've had to walk through scenarios that are unthinkable.
Yeah.
And I wish I could say it's all done, but there's still things going on that
yeah, we had to do that too. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. And I hate it. Yeah.
So we need a lot of prayer for that. And then just me being broken, the way I counsel people is I would meet them where they were at. And I care deeply for the people that I serve. And being able to, I don't have that ability right now to go date, like to sustain that with somebody, for somebody, the way that I did before. I have compassion.
I completely understand. Completely. Yeah. Because, I tried to go back to work only a few weeks afterwards. That it was very wise of you to know that wasn't going to be possible. But my husband, God bless him, felt that when he went back, it was really helpful to him. So he kept thinking, you just need to get back to work. Like that will help make things better. But he didn't think about the fact that what I do is I care for children and families, and to see these unbroken families was just so incredibly painful. And to have to counsel them about, complaining that their kid can't go to sleep at night and is always, bugging them in their room or whatever.
Coming in, wanting to talk to them at night, and you would give anything to have that one more time.
Exactly. So it was just so incredibly painful. And I would go, I've said this on the podcast, I cried between every single patient. That's what I did. I would go see a patient and then I would cry. And then I would get myself back together and go see the next patient. And then I would cry. I mean, it was horrible. It was a horrible way to be. And so I needed to take time, and I took a year, and I took a good solid year. And it was only after I started doing the podcast and I started kind of having a purpose for my grief and something else to do with my grief and in my grief, and with Andy, really, to be able to help care for other people in grief, that I was able to get back that compassion and caring for other families. And it has grown tremendously. You said that earlier. You have more compassion now than you did before. I do. There's no doubt that I do. But if I hadn't taken all of the time that I took to work on giving myself as much time for healing as I can and working on myself, I wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to.
I resonate a lot with what you're saying. And I would say my year, my wife didn't know this till probably a couple of weeks ago, but my year didn't start because the explosion happened on 9/24. Berklee's birthday is on 9/19. My birthday is on 10/22. I got out of the hospital really pretty much right before my birthday.
Yeah.
And, I had a group of guys that like, what do you want to do? I was like, I just want you guys to speak life into me. So we got around a fire and they just all just prayed, spoke life. And it was super sad, but they just spoke identity into me. And they're like, well, this is, I was like, that's who I was. That's not I don't know who I am. Because it's like, I think that's the thing for us is there's so multifactorial. Like there's nothing that compares to the loss of our daughter. There by far, there's nothing even close to the pain of that. But then there's the fact that we don't have anything. Like I didn't have a toothbrush, and so I didn't have socks. I couldn't even buy underwear because I wasn't emotionally. I didn't want to replace. I wanted my life that I had.
Yeah.
And there's still so many things. Like my days are spent with the insurance company or talking to a lawyer or things that are significant in the season, but they're not like helping somebody reconcile a marriage or, teaching a dad how to love his daughter well. And so then the daughter lights up and she gets off of drugs because it's just not the same. It's not the same of having image of your family to come home to. And then it's just great when you get home. And so it's the healing. I like what you're saying is I do limited capacity because I have a team of counselors at New Vision. Our practice is New Vision Counseling that I own, and they're fantastic. And my assistant's managing the team as best she can, and they still go on and function, but I still have to do some stuff, and it's still so hard. And these are amazing people.
Yeah.
But I'm not directly counseling, and I cry just thinking about that. I get texts from patients, hey, we're still praying for you, or then I get texts from, when are you going to get back?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people holding out. And my recommendation is I would find, go to these other people because I want you to get the best. And right now my best is going to be just getting help myself because I'm in therapy, physical, counseling therapy. I do different kinds of things because I just know how broken I am. And I know that I get easily overwhelmed. I get easily stressed, and things that were issues before are just highlighted and exasperated. And my body is not, it's like I'm getting injections in my knees just to be able to spend the summer with my son because I can barely walk without just tremendous pain. And that's another blessing. My friends, they've just contributed to me getting injections that are like 2,000 in a knee, 2,000 in another knee, just to get through the summer because we had it robbed from us last time, our trips. And that's another thing that I just want to highlight that what people can do or people in grief is it means a lot when I see your eyes get tears in them. It means a lot when you hug and you just say, I'm here, or I see compassion. It means a lot when you say, what's a practical need that I can meet, and don't feel bad about asking. And then make some suggestions. Well, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? For us, people have donated money because they know I'm not working, and because the stuff that we're doing, it just costs lots of money to get the help that we need. If you go to counseling a few times a week, and then you go to a chiropractor, then you go to a physical therapist, then you join a gym, and there's just because we're so compromised in every area. It's just been a tremendous blessing when people actually step in and you can feel that love and that care. So, I mean, we had meals for 6 months or probably 5 months solid.
So did we. Mm-hmm.
Did you? I mean,
August to December. Mm-hmm.
it's a
Yeah.
huge blessing.
Yeah.
That
It used to be like every day, and then I had to keep cutting it back because we just had loads of food. It was just like,
Did you feel? I felt guilty. I felt so guilty about all the food that went to
yeah.
waste. I've called my friends and say, hey, you want chicken pot pie? I got a whole tub of it.
Yeah.
You want lasagna? Hey, what about all these? I mean, if somebody paid for a food service to make us meals, and then I think somebody else paid for one, and so we had double meal. And I just wish they could have extended it out over a year.
We had a sign up that went like through my church, and so we had people just sign up, and then the other wonderful thing is I had somebody in the first days, actually, after Andy died, they showed up at our house with a freezer in the basement and said, you're
Wow.
going to get so much food. I want you to have a place to put it. So we had this huge, and we already had a couple of freezers. So now we had a whole extra freezer just to put food in, which was
that's a blessing.
It was a blessing. It was a blessing. And it just was a very thoughtful thing to do, to think, we have this extra freezer. I bet the Larsons need a freezer. Right.
That's so good.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, somebody, so we didn't own it. Like everything that we own was pretty much devastated, destroyed.
Yeah.
And so they sent because COVID, so many things were out of stock.
Yeah.
And so there was a fridge in the rental house that we were in, but then they bought a fridge. The only fridge that they could find for the other one was like the one that you go to a convenience store. And there's like a freestanding fridge with a glass on front. So they bought this crazy expensive refrigerator and a stand-up freezer for the exact same reason. So they put drinks in it, and it's the mineral waters, and it was really. I mean, we just needed a lot of love. We really needed a lot of love, and my wife's friends are good at decorating, and they decorated it. They hung TVs. They put rugs down. I mean, they made this home better than a VRBO as best as they could.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in the same. They found it in the same area that we moved into, and the housing market's crazy,
mm-hmm.
and so the inventory was way low where we lived.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to buy a house. The house that we live in now is probably 150 to 200,000 worth more to buy it again.
Wow.
Because of where we live, but we don't have that house, so we're living in another rental right now that we just transitioned to. It's more like a house that we would buy,
mm-hmm.
Where the other one was like a starter house,
mm-hmm.
and just not nearly as light.
Yeah,
not as light. So, yeah. One of the things I would say too is get help outside of yourself, and don't just rely on one person or a few people. I'm an atypical guy where I love to fish and be outdoors, and I love adventures, but I also love really real conversations that are deep and not trite and have purpose and significance. And I love to joke around. And so I have so many friends, and each of them are different elements of life to me. Mm-hmm. Some are great at really being patient. Some are great at leading. And in this season, I feel like a child needing people to lead me.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have businesses and things, but I just emotionally feel that way.
Yeah.
And I'm not as much there as I was, but my friends would come to the house and pick me up because I didn't drive for a while. And because I still need healing in my eyes. I still can't see great, but they would just come and take me to different places to eat. They take me to get underwear. They take me to get shorts. They take me to get shoes. They would take me to get glasses. They would take me to walk, my version of walk, which is like your probably grandma who's 102, her version. And they would just get me out, and it would be refreshing. And it would mildly break a trance for a while. And then I'd see people out, when we're out, and they'd pray. And it was just encouraging because our story was on the news. Even though I wasn't a part of it, a little bit I was, I did one interview, but it's just encouraging to be seen and to realize that our daughter is not forgotten, because that's a big fear.
Yeah.
Like we went to some places and they didn't even awkwardly, people don't know what to say, so they don't mention her at all.
Yeah.
I've kind of made a commitment that I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to educate people on just I don't want her to not be talked about. Like, she's part of our life. We're a family of 4, maybe we might be a family of more in the future, God willing. 48 years strong is what I like to say, which again, that's a statement of faith because I'm not there right now.
Yeah.
And I don't have all the intricacies figured out about health and the world and the craziness of it, but I know that I would regret more and they're not having a child. And I looking back, like I said before, I've been privileged to literally see thousands of families, individuals, people's lives just radically transformed, right? But radically. And I love that. But there's nothing in life that I've enjoyed being a part of more than being a dad. There's just not. There's just not. There's just nothing I've enjoyed and felt more value in seeing my children grow. And Berklee loved the Lord, and she had just rededicated her life again because she said she wanted to go deeper and further on her own. Just that's what she wanted to do. And we had just got her, because you get different Bibles as you get older, and we had just went and got her a new Bible, had her name in it, and yeah. So this last weekend, I went and got Hayden a Bible for his 13th birthday, which was in February. Which it's June now, so I kind of let you know where we're at in getting things done in life. And it just reminded me of how special that experience was with Berklee. So that's why we want to have more kids. And my wife adores. She says even as a child she wanted to be a mom, and she's fantastic. So what better thing to give the last years of my strength to than investing in the life of another human, to love God and to make the world a better place by the presence.
Well, thank you so much for sharing Berklee with us today and your story. I really appreciate it. I know that's a painful thing to talk about, but I know that you will bring a lot to others. So thank you for that.
Thanks for listening to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. We are always looking for new show ideas. If you'd like to be a guest, know someone who'd be a great guest, or have a show idea, please email us at marcy@andysmom.com. Be sure to visit the webpage, andysmom.com, for more content, including Marcy's blog. There you can also sign up to receive updates via email. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.